And I told her that I'd lived over half my life with a regret over something that I had done. And now Coach is going to give me a chance to rewrite that last chapter in my athletic career. And I might not make the team. I may not make it, but I've got to try. And I told her, I said, for me to have the opportunity and not try, for me, that'd be worse than getting kicked out the first time. I've got to go and try.
Welcome to Corporate Competitor Podcast, presented by Forbes Books, the show where executives share how the lessons learned playing sports shape their leadership. With me for today's special edition episode is my dear friend and a man whose amazing book I helped co-author, Mike Flynt. We're here to celebrate a milestone I've never experienced in my career. You see, after writing more than 40 books, this book with Mike is the first to be turned into a feature film, coming to theaters across the nation on September 19th. At 59 years old, Mike became the oldest contributing member of a college football team in NCAA history, returning to his alma mater nearly 4 decades after being kicked off the team. He returned to finish what he started. But this isn't just a comeback story. It's about redemption, resilience, and the courage to face regret head on. I am so excited for you to learn about his journey and hope after listening today that you will go to a local theater and buy a ticket to watch The Senior. Be sure to visit corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/notes for my favorite quotes from today's episode and for details on how you can win a signed copy of our book autographed by both me and Mike. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Don, it's an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure. I'm so glad to reconnect with you. The past 17 years since we connected on this project, it's amazing how fast time has gone by. But
I know.
yeah, you've been amazing in your support and everything that you and your organization have done to help us.
Well, I love your story. And I want to open by sharing kind of a more recent incident, right? You and I had the opportunity to attend the Fort Lauderdale International Film Festival.
Right.
Your movie, The Senior, won the festival's President's Choice Award for Best American Indie Feature in 2023. So I got to ask, what was it like to sit in the theater surrounded by strangers next to Michael Chiklis, right, the star who plays you, and watch your life story unfold on that screen in front of people who didn't even know who you were?
It was overwhelming. It was emotional, and I have to make this statement. One time during my adult life, because I don't really remember as a kid, one time if I've been in a movie theater where a movie received a standing ovation from the crowd, and it was Seabiscuit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to see Seabiscuit, and everybody stood up and applauded at the end. But when they did that in Fort Lauderdale and stood up and applauded, oh man, what a blessing! It was incredible.
I was there with my wife, Jeanette, and a couple of great friends, Stan and Lisa Moss, and we literally sat there and cried as the audience did that because it was just so emotional to see them laugh and cheer and feel your pain and like suffer with you, and at the same time watch you, the exhilaration toward the end. And it just was, I couldn't even imagine what it had to feel like to be you in that moment, because I know how I was crying.
Oh, it was, it really was. It was an emotional time, and the appreciation that I had for Wayfarer and the changes that they made and the amount of professionalism that they put into the actual shooting of the movie, it just all came together, and it was obviously so well received by that audience that it was just incredible.
For those who may not know your background, you have this remarkable football journey. Right? You started playing organized football in 3rd grade, went on to become a star defensive back at Permian High School in Odessa, Texas. the same school that's featured in Friday Night Lights, which has to be cool. And you helped lead that team to its first ever state championship. You went on to play at Sul Ross, but your years there were cut short. Can you tell us the story of what happened at the end there at Sul Ross?
Well, my dad put a lot of adversity in my life when I was young, and he felt like I was, going to be pretty small for my age, and so he he decided that he wanted to teach me how to fight. And to keep things into perspective, you have to realize that my dad's a World War II veteran. He was in D-Day and part of the Battle of the Bulge, and was wounded there. And so he brought that mindset to training me. And my dad loved me very much, but he was hard on me. And he felt like that I needed to be, because West Texas, you have to understand West Texas. You've got cowboys, you've got the roughnecks in the oil field. And so there's all kinds of confrontations going on out in West Texas. And then you got football. So we started boxing when Daddy called it boxing. I was pretty sure what we were doing was fighting. But at age 6, I put on the gloves, and it was a weekly ritual that went on for 7 years. And finally, it reached a point where I got too big to box with him down on his knees. And so he told me, he said, we're not boxing anymore. He said, but you're good at this. And he said, I want to tell you something. And he said, you don't break these rules. And he gave me 3 rules. You never start fights. If someone starts a fight with you, you better fight. And the 3rd rule was you better win. And so then, again, growing up in West Texas, if you don't mind fighting, there's a lot of opportunities. And so, long story short,
if you don't mind fighting, there's a lot of opportunities. I don't want people to miss that.
Well, yeah, and the thing about it was, I didn't mind fighting because I'd done it for so many years with my dad, and I just didn't figure anybody was going to hit me any harder than my dad did. I mean, he busted my lips, my nose, and so that was all part of the adversity that he put into my life. That I was a good person. I need for everybody to understand that. I was not a troublemaker, but I became a trouble seeker. If I felt like they needed my help, I'd jump in a heartbeat. And so I carried that attitude, that frame of mind into college with me after that incredible state championship season at Permian that started everything that inspired the book and movie Friday Night Lights. I was on full scholarship at Sul Ross. I had an incredible reputation with my teammates. I was team captain. I was an all-conference linebacker, leading tackler on that team. However, the administration did not share that same opinion of me. I had 10 off the field altercations over a 2.5-year time period. And the president of the college took a very dim view of my off the field activities. And so two-a-days, 1971, freshman is late for curfew. As team captain, I was appointed by the coaches to make sure that everyone was in. He wasn't in. He took exception to me telling him when he could and couldn't come and go, and it got physical and he got hurt. And they called the police to get everything quietened down at the dorm. The president of the college was called. He called the head coach and said, I've heard Mike Flynt's name for the last time. And so coach called me in next morning. While I was there in his office, the assistant coaches were packing my clothes in my room. The whole team was out on the field. And he told me he didn't have any choice. He said, it's you or me, Mike. He's told me, Mike Flynt's got to go. And so I said, have you talked to my teammates about that? Have you asked them how they feel? He said, I don't have to ask them. He said, I know how they feel. He said, I don't have any choice. He said, you need to call your dad and we'll meet him on the highway halfway between here and Odessa. And so I was kicked out that day, and that began what was my greatest regret in life.
Wow. And that team with U.S. captain, there were some high expectations. There's some good expectations for the team. You guys were going to be good.
Yeah. Well, see, we had gone 8-2 or 8-3 in 1970, and the only games we lost narrowly, and it was really team mistakes that we didn't play together. And so I told our team at the end of the season, I said, look, we lost these 3 games for something we can fix. And I'm telling you right now, it's not going to happen again. We're not going to do this next year. And so I came back as their team captain, and we were picked to win the conference. We had almost everybody back off that 8-3 team. And I got kicked out. They went 4-6-1. They didn't even have a winning season. And I shouldered that. I thought, man, if I'd have been there, I know what we could have done.
After Sul Ross, you actually built quite a successful career, right? You worked in strength and conditioning with major football programs like Nebraska, Oregon, Texas A&M. You founded Power-Based Fitness and even developed equipment that used by the U.S. military to allow soldiers to stay fit in the field. How did maintaining peak physical condition throughout your life prepare you for the path that followed?
Well, it was, Eileen's influence on me that changed my whole life. I fell in love with her. We got married, started our family. I went into strength coaching at Nebraska and then Oregon and Texas A&M. And I was one of the original founders of the National Strength and Conditioning Association. We got over 60,000 members now worldwide in that organization. And I always had a philosophy about training my athletes that I would never ask my athletes to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself. And so I stayed in great shape, training other people in how to stay in shape. And I resigned from coaching, many years ago, and started my fitness business, got a patent on design patent on some fitness equipment, worked with the military at the Pentagon, and a lot of things fitness related. And so I continued, and I've always had this saying about myself, is that I'm about 30 days away from being in really good shape. And so that's,
and now you're in your 70s and you still say it, right?
Yeah. I'm 77 now, and I really am. Within 30 days, I can do just about anything that I want to do. So I started getting notices in May of 2007 about a Sul Ross reunion, and it wasn't a football reunion; it was a college reunion. And I looked at that and I thought, man, there's no way I'm going back. You
had never been back. You had never been back to the school from the time they walked you off the campus to then. Never been back.
I had never gone back, and I did everything that I could to bury that memory, because for years, it consumed me that I let those guys down, and that I knew the talent we had, and I knew what we could have accomplished had I have been there. But there was nothing I could do about it, and it made me miserable. And so I finally learned to manage it. You never forget something like that, but I learned to manage it. I didn't think about it all the time. And then when those notices started coming in, I thought, because what'll happen, I'll go back, and one of my teammates is going to be there for sure, and they'll start bringing up questions about it, and then I'll be back where I was. And so I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to do that. Well, the calls kept coming in, and finally Eileen, she said, I don't know what's up with you, because I'd never shared with Eileen. I had never told
You
her.
never share with your wife, the person who's kind of central to everything, how deep the regret was.
Huh. I wouldn't talk with anyone about it. I had never shared it with her. And she said, I don't know what's going on with you, but I know these guys want to see you. I know you want to see them. Why don't you just go down to San Antonio, have a good time, and come back and not be stressed about this. So I did. I went down to San Antonio. I mean, soon as I walked in that hotel where everybody was staying, a bunch of guys were already in the lobby, and the football players had congregated in one area. And, the jokes started flying around, and everybody, talking
Like being in
about,
a locker room again.
yeah, everybody talking about how everybody looked and all that. And, but then it came up, Flynt, what was it about that one fight that got you kicked out when you had so many? What happened with that? And I began to tell them that it was the straw that broke the camel's back, that I had been in so many fights that one, regardless of how right I was and justified in doing it in self-defense, it was still that straw that the president of the college said, that's it.
Heard his name too many times.
Yeah, I heard his name too many times. And so I told him, and then I told him, I said, I can never express the regret that I have for having let you guys down all those years ago. And I said, what gets me more than anything is I still feel like I can play. Well, they were laughing at me, all with the exception of Stan. And he was a linebacker that played behind me, Stan Williamson. And he was just as stone-faced, and he looked at me and he said, well, why don't you? And I said, well, I don't know what. And he said, go back and play. And I said, man, there's no way after all these years that I still have any eligibility. He said, hey, listen. He said, if you think you can run with those guys, if you think you can take the hits, it's Division III now. It's a whole new set of rules. You need to check it out. You may still be eligible. I couldn't think about anything else the rest of the weekend. and so, I started thinking about who I could call that wouldn't think I was crazy, and
that's a limited number.
Yeah, really. And so then it hit me, my linebacker coach back in the day, he was my go-to guy when I'd get thrown in jail for fighting and stuff. He'd bail me out and run me half to death. He took me out on the highway one time and he said, get out and run. And I said, how far, coach? And he said, till I can't see you no more. I mean, we're in West Texas. I can run in the dark. But anyway, I thought, Coach Larned, I hadn't talked to him in almost 40 years, but I kept up with his career. I knew where he was living. He had retired and he was living in Abilene. I called directory assistants, got a home number for him and called him. His wife answered the phone. And I said, Mrs. Larned, this is Mike Flynt. Is Coach around? And she said, Mike Flynt. Yeah, Mike, he's standing right here, Jerry. Mike Flynt's on the phone, wants to talk to you. He gets on the phone. He says, Mike, are you in jail? I said, yeah, coach, that's why I'm calling. I said, no, really. I said, I'm dead serious about something. I said, Coach, I want to go back and play my senior year, and I need to check to see if I have eligibility, and I don't know where to start. And he said, how old are you, Mike? And I said, well, I'm 59. And he said, well, I think you're crazy. But he said, if you tell me you can play, I believe you. I said, Coach, I think I can play. And he said, okay, all right, here's where you need to call. And he gave me the lady's name that was head of the rules division at the NCAA American Southwest Conference, which is the conference that Sul Roth was in. And I called her fully expecting to get voicemail. And she answers the phone. And all of a sudden, I'm flat-footed. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there's no way that she's going to understand all this. And so I started talking to her like I was calling for a friend that wanted to find out if he had eligibility. But
Checking for a friend.
yeah, it got so confusing that I said, ma'am, look, I'm calling about me. I was kicked out for fighting, but I was not enrolled in class yet. And so I just need to find out if I still have a semester of eligibility left. And she said, oh, okay. She said, well, have you got your transcripts? And I said, I do. And so we went through semester by semester. And finally she said, well, Mr. Flynt, how old did you say you are? And I said, well, I'm 59. She said, well, not only are you eligible, but I will come watch you play. And so that's how it all started.
You used the line earlier. You said you learned how to manage the regret. You put it out of your mind and things. But sometimes life, if you spend too much time managing your regrets, right? You don't ever take the opportunity to face them head on.
Yeah.
How much more liberating is it? And if you were giving advice to someone listening today that has a regret, how much more liberating is it to actually go through the effort, painful as it was for you, and we're going to talk about that, to actually undo that regret?
I realized what so many people dealing with regret have also realized is that you can't undo the past. That regret is there, but what you can do is change the meaning of that regret. And for me, I looked at the whole thing. My motivation for going back and trying to make that team was I knew that there were a bunch of young men there that could benefit from my life experiences, from the knowledge that I had of strength training and all the years of playing football and watching football at up to age 59, and that I could go back and help a bunch of young guys that I didn't even know. But for me, helping them would help me to deal with those guys I let down back in 1971. And so my whole motive in doing this was nothing other than to be a life example, a sounding board, someone that they could look to for wisdom, answers about a lot of things outside of football. And
So instead of becoming the star player, you kind of you were their Yoda.
yeah, I went there, and because of my nature and the athlete that I was and the mindset I always had when I put that helmet on, I was a football player. I mean, and I treated them, and I didn't want them to cut me any slack either. But when that helmet came off, I was their friend. I was their mentor. I was someone that they could ask anything. Ask me about anything,
And many of them did.
Oh, they did. Yeah.
Yep. So let's take you back now. You've got word from the NCAA that there's time on your clock that you can still go play. You show up at in Coach Wright's office, right?
Yeah.
And there's a great scene in the movie. I don't want to spoil it for everybody, but I love the interaction between you and Coach. Tell me about that first meeting, and how did you convince him to let you rejoin the team?
The process started. I found out that I had eligibility from the NCAA. Then I started contacting. It was early June. I started contacting Sol Ross. I called the president. I called the athletic director. I called the head coach, Coach Wright, and went to voicemail, or Coach Wright's secretary would answer the phone. but he was out, and all of a sudden it hit me. I can't do this by phone. I mean, because if I'm a 59, if I'm a head coach and a 59-year-old guy calls and wants to come try out for my team, I can end that deal real quick. I mean,
Just don't answer the phone.
yeah, and so I thought I've got to do this in person. And so I flew to Midland, Odessa, from here in Tennessee, rented a car, drove to Alpine, and I had checked with Coach Wright's secretary, and she said that he would be in town. And so I knocked on his door. He was sitting at his desk. He motioned me to come in, and uh, I introduced myself, told him when I'd played at Solos before, and told him I'd been kicked out and why. I told him the kind of player that I was team captain. I was all conference linebacker. And then I told him the coaches that played the universities where I'd coached and what I'd done there with my career. And then I told him, I said, I'd like to have an opportunity to walk on to your team as a linebacker and try to make this team. And he said, now, wait a minute. He said, you want to play? And I said, yes, sir. I want to play linebacker. And he said, how old did you say you are? And I said, well, I'm 59. And when were you at Permian? I said, well, it was 1965. And he said, oh man, he said, he told me weeks later, and he said, man, I thought you were going to be wanting to be a volunteer coach. But he was struggling with what to do. And Drew Bridges, the assistant head coach, walked in his office and said, Coach, you got a bunch of freshmen down on the field waiting on you. And he said, oh man, Mike, he said, I forgot about those kids. I asked him, he said, I should have been down there 15 minutes ago. He said, I've got to get down to the field. And I said, well, can I go with you? And he said, yeah, come on, you ride with me. And so we start down the hall. We're walking down the hall, and Coach Bridges is walking behind me. And he said, I heard you said you played here at Sul Ross before. And I said, yeah, it was a long time ago. And he said, did you know a guy that, played defensive back? And he was telling me his name. And I said, yeah, I said, he was playing defensive back when I was playing linebacker. I said, how do you know him? He said, that's my father-in-law. And I thought, oh man.
Now the coaches are the equivalent of the children of the people you played with.
Yeah. So anyway, we get out of the field. There are 13 freshmen there. And it's about 95 degrees. It's early June. And these guys are goofing off around the field. Coach Wright calls them up, and he said, okay, I want you guys to get stretched out, and then I want you to choose teams. He said, we're going to play flag football. And he said, I want to find out what kind of shape you're in. I want to see what kind of speed you've got. So there's going to be no walking at all. He said, you run sprints and then you jog back to the ball at the end of the play. So you guys get stretched out. Well, they started stretching out, and I looked at him and I said, Coach, can I join them? And he looked over at Coach Bridges, and he just shrugged his shoulders and he said, yeah, you can go ahead and join them. And so I had worn a T-shirt and some baggy jeans, and so I had my tennis shoes on. I was good to go. So we got stretched out. They picked teams, and I was the last one picked. And I had a lot of fun with that later in the year. But then we lined up, and we're getting ready to start. And Coach blows the whistle, and he said, "Wait a minute. This is going to be total confusion." He said, "You guys on this side, take your shirts off. Y'all will be skins. You other guys, you'll be shirts." And so I was on the skins. I had to take my shirt off. So I took my shirt off, and so we lined up. He blew the whistle, and we ran. And we ran. And we ran. And I mean, we ran for almost an hour. And He blew the whistle, called us all up, and he said, "Okay, you guys, get to orientation." He said, "Mike, come on with me. I'll take you back. I'll take you back to your car, field house." Well, we got in this van to sit down, and this vehicle's been sitting in the sun now. I mean, it was 150 degrees in that van, and I've been running. So we get in the front seat and sit down, and he gets the steering wheel, and he's just staring out the windshield. He's just sitting there. And I'm thinking, what is going on? And he said, "This is a good thing that you did coming down here in person." He said, "You be in my office in the morning, 9 o'clock. I'll give you an answer to your question about whether or not you can walk on this team." And so he drove me back to my car. I went back to my hotel. I was there, 8:45. I was there early. And he introduced me he had all his assistant coaches, everybody in his office. He introduced me to everybody, and he said, look, he said, I got to tell you that I've had 3 questions in my mind that I've been trying to get an answer for concerning you wanting to come back and walk onto this team. And he said, the first question was, number one, physically. Could a man your age physically play college football? He said, watching you run with those kids yesterday, he said, there is no doubt in my mind physically that you can do this. And don't you ever take your shirt off around me again. He was 52, but, and he said that the second thing was a reason. He said, for you to come back and jeopardize your health at your age, you would have to have an incredible reason to come back and play your senior year. And he said, I can't think of a better reason than the one you've given me to help a bunch of young men that you don't even know to make up for those guys that you let down all of years ago. He said, I think that's an incredible reason. And he said, and the third thing that I just been struggling with was commitment, devotion, the amount of focus that you're going to have to put on this. He said, but he said, I can see it in your eyes. I can hear it in your voice. He said, you've probably got more energy, more devotion, more commitment than any player that we've got on this team. And so he said, you be here August 15th. I'm going to give you a chance to make this team.
And now you go home to Tennessee. You got to tell Eileen, guess
yeah.
what? We're going to put everything on hold for the next few months because I'm going to go do the craziest thing. Become the oldest football player in NCAA history at the time. It's crazy.
Well, yeah, I became the oldest linebacker. There were a couple of kickers that were in their early 60s, but kickers, but you got to include them. But I went home and told Eileen, and our youngest daughter had just left for college, and Eileen's getting ready to go for orientation at the University of Tennessee, where Lily is. And we decided we'd downsize, we're empty nesters, so we'll sell our house, get a smaller house. We had a contract on our house almost immediately. So she's ignoring me. She's thinking, well, the NCAA is going to tell him, no, he can't do that. Or he's going to get out there and that coach is going to laugh him out of his office. And so
she didn't expect that it would have a real positive outcome.
No, she was just, pacifying me and letting me go on and go through the motions and all that, fully convinced that it was never going to happen. And then I come back and she has a list of houses for us to go look at. And I said, Eileen, coach is going to give me a chance. We're going back to college. We're going back down to Alpine to Sul Ross. And she looked at me and she said, I cannot believe at 59 years old that you want to go back and try to play college football. I feel like I'm married to Peter Pan. and then it hit me that I had never told her. I had never explained to her the depth of the pain and hurt that I had had for so many years over this. And we sat down, and I told her that I'd lived over half my life with a regret over something that I had done. And now coach is going to give me a chance to rewrite that last chapter in my athletic career. And I, I might not make the team. I may not make it, but I've got to try. And I told her, I said, for me to have the opportunity and not try, for me, that'd be worse than getting kicked out the first time. I've got to go and try. And then she told me, she said, well, I know if the shoe was on the other foot and it meant that much to me, you'd do it for me. So she said, let's go play football.
Let's go play football. I think one of the most striking aspects of this entire story is your self-awareness, right? You don't dodge your past. You actually you own it. In the telling of this story and the way you laid it out, you said, own what you've done wrong. That's the first step to growing and moving forward. That was a quote that's in the book that we had the opportunity to work on. And what gave you the strength to confront your mistakes so openly, and how did that mindset, that willingness to confront, I mean, I know there's the goodness of what you were able to do for those young men, but this idea of being able to kind of internalize, say, you know what, I've made right what I made wrong.
I just took the position that there was nothing I could do to change it, as I mentioned earlier. However, by owning it, by taking ownership of the mistakes that I'd made and being committed to changing my life. And then from a spiritual standpoint, when Eileen led me to faith in Christ, that changed everything. And it gave me somewhere to take those problems and take those issues that I couldn't deal with, but I knew that Christ could. And so it was a continual trip to my knees to turn things over to him and trust him, and just trust him for enabling me to deal with it. And he did it.
So I'd love to, as I said earlier, we have a lot of C-level executives who listen to this podcast. Many of them probably have regrets. What advice would you give if you're coaching one of us who have something that in the past that we just know we let other people, we let ourselves down, let others down, we our behaviors. How can you coach me to begin taking ownership of my mistakes and even when it's uncomfortable, painful?
The thing about mistakes and regrets, those things in our lives, that falls under the adversity category. Life is full of adversity. And, think about it. Gravity, where would we be without gravity? But gravity is adversity. And then there's controlled adversity in our lives, things that we do to improve ourselves physically. There's adversity involved in that. The adversity that comes into our lives in the form of regret, what I have learned, and from a spiritual standpoint, is speaking to myself out loud. There are no words that have greater impact on you than the words that you speak about yourself. And so many of us get caught up in negative talk about things, regrets that we have, mistakes that we've made, and we beat ourselves up. And everybody goes through that in life. That's that adversity in life. But overcoming those regrets in your mind is a process of speaking to yourself in a kind and productive, positive way, that you're always looking, you're always open for that opportunity to overcome that regret, change the meaning of that regret. Like I said earlier, change. For me, that's what it was all about. I couldn't change what I lost in those young men that I felt like I let down, but I had a bright future in making that team and helping a bunch of men that I didn't know. And so that was a driving force for me. That was a motivation for me. And so anyone dealing with regret, the sound of your voice to your brain is the most important sound that your brain hears. It gets on point and you speak positive. You talk out loud about the things that you want to accomplish to overcome that regret. You talk about positive things concerning that and you repeat it again and again. And in our society today, you can put a couple of earbuds in and have a cell phone in your hand and you can walk around talking to yourself and everybody thinks you're on the phone. So you're not considered crazy. But I'm telling you, the self-talk is incredible and what it can accomplish in your life.
What a great nugget that is. Thank you, Mike. So it's not every day that a Division III school has Good Morning America, NBC Nightly News at their media day, right? But because of the uniqueness of your story, you made that happen. What was it like when I know there's this fun scene in the movie where the coach thinks he's being punked, right? That there's got to be film cameras somewhere kind of watching Mike
Yeah.
Flynt try to make this team. But what was it like to have that attention really kind of showered down because of the uniqueness of what you were trying to do?
Well, it was something that I totally was blind. I was naive to. In fact, when I announced at our church, our pastor, he just said, "You got to tell the congregation about what you're doing."
This is in
So
Nashville,
yes, or here in Franklin.
Franklin. Yeah.
Yeah. So I get up, and make the announcement. I'm going back and all this stuff, and the audience went crazy. They just went nuts, and so then I started getting phone calls about there's going to be a book, there's going to be a movie. And I told Eileen, I said, these people are nuts. I mean, who cares anything about an old guy going back to play college football? I just didn't get it. And then there was a writer, Jamie Aaron, he was with a major publication. He was an AP Associated Press writer and he was in Alpine for another story. And someone called him and said, "Hey, there's a guy there at Sol Ross that's, 59 years old. That's going to try to make that football team." Well, he jumped all over it.
All you need is one wire service story, and suddenly
Yeah,
everything changes. Then
yeah,
guys like me show up, right?
yeah, yeah. It went out everywhere.
But the attention actually kind of made it a little harder, I would think, because now people are there kind of just they want Mike Flynt, right? They and you're not able to play because of injury. How did all of that play into the dynamic of the team as well? Because you're there, your stated purpose is to be there for those young men, and now suddenly it's this big national hoopla that begins around you.
Well, my teammates for the most part, there were some guys that were extremely jealous, and they thought that it was all about me and that I was there for the publicity, and that was not true. And most of my teammates realized that, and they knew that, and they defended me. I mean, there were some incredible stories about them interacting on with media on, people calling me an old man. That would really get them upset.
I remember I was there. I got a chance to talk to a number of them. Now they did have your nickname was Father Time, but still, it was incredible the way they loved on you and again, just I think about the generational societal racial dynamic difference between the team you left in 1971 and that team in 2007. It couldn't have been any more different.
Yeah, it really it was incredible, and it to me it was all about my attitude and going into that, because I saw myself. I mean, I thought, what an incredible opportunity that God has given me to help a bunch of young men in a way that no one else can help them, because I know what it's like to be a part of a team. And the impact the coach has is one thing, but your interaction with your teammates that's a different level. And so I had the honor and the privilege of being placed into that environment, and I was so excited about it. And I knew I knew it was going to be, a feeling out process, and there were going to be possibly some problems, and there were. But for the most part, I mean, I went to get my physical, and the nurse, I filled out my chart and gave it to her, and she looked at me and she said, "Mr. Flynt, we're doing the coaches next week. This week we're doing the players." And I said, "I'm a player." And she looked at my chart and she said, "You born in 1948 and you gonna play?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And so then I get down to the field house and they're handing out equipment, and the guys are, goofing off with each other. And one of them keeps looking at me and he walks over and he said, "Are you getting equipment? Man, what are you doing? You gonna coach or what?" And I said, "No, I'm here to play." And he said, "To play? How old are you?" I said, "I'm 59. 59, 59. He started calling all the other players up. "Y'all got to come look at this guy." And so anyway, but we put those helmets on. I went through all the drills. I did everything just like they did. That the problem was I had never played football in a 59-year-old body before.
Yeah. So your mind is thinking like a 21-year-old.
Oh yeah,
But your body is just a little different.
Oh man, there wasn't enough ice in Alpine, Texas. I'm telling you, I was sore all the time. And so, but the interaction with my teammates through all that, they began to realize that I couldn't, particularly when the weather changed and it started getting colder, I had to keep moving. I could not get warmed up and get out there and stand for my muscles to tighten up. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
And so then the injuries, that was something that I made a hit on the numbers tackle in a linebacker drill during two-a-days. And this was just right after Coach Wright had announced that I'd made the team. He went around telling different people, he said, "Hey, he legitimately made this team," because there were some reporters there that said, "Hey, he's getting a lot of publicity. It's good for you to
Charity
keep
case."
around." Yeah.
Right.
And he said, "Hey man, no." He said, he made this team. Well, I made this tackle and everything went black, and I couldn't lift my right arm. And I thought it was a pinched nerve, and I walked over to the trainer and I said, "Doc, I think I pinched a nerve." I said, I can't lift my right arm." And he said, "Hang on a second." And he said, "Just stand with your arms down by your side." And he took his hands and he put them on top of my helmet and he just pushed down.
Oh,
I just dropped to my knees. I mean, the pain.
bulging disc.
Oh my gosh. And he said, he helped me up and he said, "That's not a pinched nerve." He said, "That's your spine." He said, "This is over." And I said, "Doc, it can't be over." I said, "Yeah, I need to see an orthopedist, but this is not over." I said, "Don't say anything yet to the coaches." And he said, "Okay, I'll get you to the orthopedist." But he said, "I'm just telling you, this is over." And they got me in, did an MRI, and I had two badly bulged discs, C5 and C6. And the orthopedist told me, he said, "You're not playing football anymore." He said, "Do you know who Kevin Everett is?" And I had just read about Kevin Everett with the Buffalo Bills. He ruptured those same two discs, and that they said that he would have died on the football field had it not been for cryogenics, them being able to freeze his neck. And they thought he was going to be a quadriplegic, but he's recovered. He never played another down of football, but he did recover. But at my age, the orthopedist said, "Man, there's no way." And I told him, I said, "Look, I've got a PhD in Mike Flynt. I know my body. if you tell me what I need to do to get you to release me to play, get the swelling down um, in my spine and those vertebrae, and tell me, I'll get it done. And so he gave me shots and gave me a program, things to do, and I stayed on it faithfully. And the players knew what I was doing. They knew that I was hurt, and they knew why.
Yep.
And so the doc finally released me to play, and
And we're going to leave a cliffhanger here because I don't want people to not go see the movie because what happens next is why the audience stood for a standing ovation at the end of the movie. One of the things you said was that, sports taught you many lessons. You said play to your strengths, master the essentials, and cultivate a winning attitude. Last question. You got a whole group of listeners out there today who want to know, what would Mike Flynt say? What advice would you give to someone to try to apply those principles in their work life today? Play to your strengths, master the essentials, create and cultivate a winning attitude.
well, and to play to your strengths is that we all have gifts and talents, those things that are easier for us than some other people. And whenever I talked about playing to my strengths, I had faced a lot of adversity, and I think it's so important people understand that adversity many times is an attitude issue, because adversity can be circumstantial, and your attitude, that's something that, according to Stanford University, your attitude is the only thing in your life that you have 100% control of, is how you receive something. And so when you play to your strength, you use that self-talk that I've mentioned, and you talk about the strengths that you have, the areas that are easy for you, the areas that you enjoy, and you cultivate that. In my life, my dad put adversity in my life, and I was working so hard to please him that I realized that fitness became who I was. And so I was continually focusing a tremendous amount of my time on being fit when I met Boyd Epley from University of Nebraska, and he offers me a strength coaching job. And it was like, oh my gosh. I mean, the lights just went off. I thought, this is it. This is what I want to do. And so I was playing to my strengths. I was taking the things that had been involuntarily put into my life and allowing that to cause to surface some things that I didn't realize were things that I truly enjoyed, things that were, to me, easy. And I was motivated to those things. And so find those things in your life. Be looking for that in your life. What is it that you just, like that old saying that when you do something that you love, then you never work another day again in your life. And so, play to your strength. That's where your strength is.
I love it. Mike Flynt, it was the honor of a lifetime to have worked with you so many years ago, to have stayed your friend for so many years beyond that. And I can't wait for September 19th to sit in a theater with a bunch of people I don't know and watch your story light up the screen again. God bless you, my brother. And I appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much, Don. You've been just a tremendous friend, and everything that you've done, your talent, the strengths that you've played to in becoming a writer, and how well you've done it. And so I'm grateful for you. I'm so thankful that this is finally God's perfect timing, that it's happening. And I pray that literally millions of people go see this story and walk out of there believing that there's nothing in their lives that they can't accomplish, and that they're going to go try. So
I love it.
thank you.
Well, let's do it. Typically I offer you 3 takeaways from whatever interview I do. But today I really want to focus on just one. See, the power of Mike's story, right? The quality of all that earned him the right to actually have a movie being made about that story is the understanding of it's the discussion of regret, right? And that if you have regret, he teaches us how to face it. Remember, he said, I did everything I could to bury it, but it consumed me. That happens, right? It happens to so many people in the course of regret. It becomes that voice in your head that you're the conversation you're having with yourself that is completely negative. And he said, while I couldn't undo it, I could change the meaning of that regret. He could actually turn it into a positive. He could turn it into something that he could go do on behalf of the team that was there at the time. So I love that, and I thought that that entire conversation about how Mike managed to use his pursuit of a new meaning for his regret impacted the lives of so many. And it's, I will tell you, beyond everything else, it's a darn good movie. You got to go see it. But as I mentioned in the intro, we're doing a fun book giveaway. Mike and I both signed 3 copies of The Senior. And to enter to win, subscribe to our Corporate Competitor Podcast YouTube channel and leave a comment on this video to confirm you entered. We're going to pick 3 winners on the day the movie hits theaters on September 19th. I appreciate you.